Welcome back, everybody, to the Calaveria podcast, your one-stop shop for all things supernatural. I'm your host, Jose, and I am alone for this episode. So, in the last episode, we said that Samantha was going to be going back to school, and as of the recording of this episode and of, this upcoming future, she's going to be at school. So, we're still going to try to figure out her schedule, see what that's like, but I'm pretty sure she'll be in either probably this next episode, hopefully, if not like the one after that. We're going to try to get everything worked out real soon. But for this episode, it's just me. But nonetheless, we still are doing our thing here, and I still have a great episode for you guys. So this week, I have a Folklore Friday episode for you guys. But before we get into that, I do want to touch on something that I covered in one of our prior episodes. We actually had like a sort of theme, if you guys remember. We talked about these different ghost stories, and for some reason, restrooms seem to come up in every single one of these stories. It was just like a weird little coincidence, so we said, that's our theme, like restroom ghosts. And in that episode, I told the story about how at my work, I always seem to like encounter something. I mean, I don't know what it is, right? I don't know if it's a ghost or something, but whatever it is, whenever I am in the stall, and it's not every single time, but these times that it happened to me, right, I would be in the stall, and as I mentioned in the previous episode, if you guys didn't listen to that, check out that episode. We have some great scary stories for you guys. But in that episode, I said how to get into the restrooms at my workplace, you need to have a code so that it prevents like the public from going in. And that restroom specifically is a very old restroom, and the buttons are really clanky, and so it makes a lot of noise. And when you're inside the restroom, you can hear whenever somebody is potentially going to come inside, because you hear the buttons being pressed, and then you'll hear like a click at the very end once like the lock disengages. And as I mentioned in that episode, anytime I hear that, I just kind of like prepare myself. I just like to like make noise, I guess, so people know that I'm in the stall so they don't come over there, because that's one thing that I hate more than anything is like somebody like looking through the little crack. I don't know. I feel like I'm probably not the only person. I feel like I share this experience with other people. You don't want anybody looking at you when you're using the restroom. I don't know if that's just me. I hope that's not just me, but nonetheless, I do this every single time. Well, when the specific time, so actually the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it's actually happened probably 3 more times that I never mentioned on the podcast. So I'll be using the restroom, I hear this clicking, and then the final disengage. The door opens, and this is a workplace where everybody's kind of wearing like formal wear. So you tend to hear people's like shoes or like dress shoes. They tend to like, click on the floor, like same thing as like heels, like as like women wear high heels. So you hear that on the tile floor, and somebody's walking inside, and I'm just waiting to see whether or not they're going to come over, right? So that's why I'm making all this noise, or they're just going to end up using the urinal, and nothing. I don't hear anything. And so I'm thinking, okay, whatever, they're handling their business, they're probably just using the urinal, that's fine. And I'm waiting. And then some time goes by, and I don't hear anything. I don't hear the toilet flush. I don't hear them washing their hands. I don't hear the, paper towel dispenser. I don't hear the door open. I don't hear nothing. They never leave. And then by the time that I finally get out, there's nobody there. Well, like I said, this happened to me at least 3 other times since I've said this on the podcast. And the most recent one actually happened this last week. And I just remember every single time it happens, I text Samantha every single time. And it's so weird because I can't explain it. Today I was thinking, okay, what if it's maybe somebody pressing the buttons, right? Disengaging the lock, opening the door, taking a step or a couple steps in, and then just leaving before the door closes, right? But then I began to think, I would hear them walk away, I would hear the footsteps kind of like fade away. Like the sound of the footsteps wouldn't just be consistent, the same volume the entire time, which that's the case, because whenever somebody walks in, it sounds like they're getting closer towards me because they're walking into the restroom. Whereas if they were walking out or away from the restroom, I would hear the volume just decrease over time. But that's not the case, because this last time I made sure to think about it, right? Every single time somebody comes in, I always my mind immediately goes like, oh, let's see if this is going to be an actual person or if this is like that restroom ghost that I was talking about. And majority of the time it's an actual person, but this last time it hadn't happened in so long, so I didn't think anything of it until I realized, wait a minute, I do not hear this person using the restroom. I did not hear them leave. I did not hear them wash their hands. Nothing at all. And when I get out of the restroom, nobody is there. I've gotten to the point where I'm not scared of it anymore. I don't know if I was ever really scared of it actually, but it's just the fact that it would kind of creep me out and weird me out. Now it's just to the point where I want to know what it is. So I will keep you guys updated on that. If it happens again, you guys will hear from me again. But yeah, I mean, what do you guys think? Let me know. If you send us an email or something. In my eyes, I'm going to keep calling it that bathroom ghost. But yeah, I really don't know. And Samantha told me that I should talk about it on the podcast again. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I haven't talked about it in a while because it seems to keep happening. I don't know if anybody else experiences this. I've told it to, I think, one or two of my coworkers, and they didn't really say anything about it. They didn't say that they experienced the same thing. It was just kind of oh, okay, you're weird. Please, let me know what you guys think. And well, now that I've got that out of the way, I want to introduce today's topic for you guys. So as I mentioned, it's going to be a Folklore Friday episode, and for this episode, we are doing El Charro Negro. Juan worked as a miner, a job that allowed him to take care of his family, just enough to get by. He was upset with his place in life. To Juan, there was only one thing that could make his life any better, the one thing he lacked. One afternoon, after a long day of work, he decided to have a drink with some friends. Soon enough, Juan became emboldened by liquid courage and expressed his frustrations. Life is unfair to us. I would give anything to be rich and powerful. As he spoke, a tall man dressed in an all-black charro's outfit walked into the cantina and approached him. The man crept closer to Juan and whispered in his ear,
"If you want, your wish may come true."
It was at that moment Juan noticed he was all alone. No one remained in the cantina other than him and the strange charro. The charro proceeded to tell Juan to go to an old abandoned mine. With liquid courage still flowing through his body, he agreed. He made the trip to the old mine, but once he got there, he had no idea what he was supposed to do. Confused and unsure of what to do, he decided to leave. Why had that man sent him to an old mine? Better yet, why did he listen? As he was leaving, something caught his eye. A huge snake, like something he had never seen before, was laying in a hole. Amazed by the size of the snake, Juan thought he could make a profit off of it, and so he decided he would sell it the next day. Upon returning home, he placed the snake in a hole and made sure to board it up before going to bed. In his sleep, Juan experienced strange visions and nightmares that he could not distinguish from reality, given the alcohol he had consumed. He dreamt that the snake he had brought home spoke to him and said, "Thank you for giving me your home, and accepting that I enter your soul. When you wake up, you will find payment for your soul located in your barn. If you decide to keep it, you must give me your son." The next morning, when Juan awoke, he immediately went to the barn and found bags full of gold coins. He was amazed. He was rich. Surely his dream couldn't have even been real, right? Well, it was all too real. Just as Juan stood in astonishment at his newfound fortune, he heard his wife's cries and was immediately brought back to reality. His youngest son was missing. It was at this moment he realized his other son was pointing at the hole. Frantically, he removed the boards covering up the hole, and there laid his boy, torn apart, with no trace of the snake. Any man would have been distraught, experiencing a variety of emotions. But as for Juan, nothing. His greed had surpassed his feelings of anguish, and the loss of his son was quickly overshadowed by his newly acquired wealth. He would go on to build a farm and enjoy the luxuries of life, until some years later, he had another dream. Again, the snake offered riches in exchange for his son. Juan was no longer the man he once used to be. He no longer valued the lives of others, and so he decided he would sacrifice the lives of his many sons whom he had had with multiple women shortly after becoming wealthy. He continued this trend until his time came and he no longer had anyone else to offer. It seemed as though Juan had gotten off with his cruel ways without punishment. During his funeral, many prayed and sung for the man until one man emerged. A man dressed in an all-black charro outfit. The Charro, or El Charro Negro, as many remembered him, began to shout and demand Juan pay him. El Charro soon disappeared, leaving a lingering odor of sulfur where he stood. Unnerved, the funeral goers decided to open up Juan's coffin, and were shocked to see where once laid the body of a man, now only laid a skeleton. The story you heard is of just one iteration of the legend of El Charro Negro. Similar to La Llorona, the legend tends to vary wherever you are in Mexico, which is why there isn't one set place of origin for the legend. The legend is said to be told in Puebla, Veracruz, Tlaxcala, and Jalisco, among other states. It is said that long ago, El Charro was actually a living person. He is said to have come from a humble beginning, growing up with a poor family. Despite their hardships, his parents always showed him love. But this never seemed to be enough for the young Charro. You see, he craved the finer things in life. He always tried to dress well and have the best clothes. He would even go days without eating just to save a few pesos. He did this to save up for a quality sombrero. Having lived a life of poverty, he grew tired and could no longer take grueling days of work with little money to show for it. The money was never good enough. On top of this frustration and anger, the world seemed to be playing some sort of sick joke on him, as his parents would soon pass away. Stacked with the weight of the world on top of him, he grew miserable. He could not live this life any longer. So one day, he made a decision that would alter his life forever. The young Charro was left with no choice but to summon the devil and ask for riches. No one knows how he was able to summon the devil, but he did. And immediately upon summoning him, the devil knew exactly what he wanted. He offered him wealth beyond belief, so much so that he wouldn't even know what to do with it. In return, the devil asked for one thing: his soul. You see, El Charro was brave and confident, and he did not fear the devil's request, so he accepted. As a result of his newly formed deal, the young Charro now had all the riches he'd ever imagined. He took full advantage of his newfound fortune and splurged on anything he could think of. Years passed, and as such, El Charro was now a man, and he began to realize how foolishly he had spent his wealth. The woman, gambling, clothing, and other vices did nothing for him, and he soon became consumed by loneliness. He was well aware that all the people around him weren't there for him, but for his possessions. Trapped in his own mind, El Charro had completely forgot about his deal with the devil, and on the day the devil appeared to remind him of his fate, he was shocked and full of fear. Surely he couldn't have believed that the devil would forget, right? Well, following this visit from his friend down under, El Charro felt like he had no choice but to hide. He instructed the staff on his hacienda to place crosses all over his property and even ordered them to build a small chapel. El Charro found himself restless thinking about his deal and could not carry the weight of his debt any longer. So, one quiet night, he grabbed a bag full of the last gold coins he had, mounted his best horse, and took off without saying a word. El Charro underestimated the power of the devil once again. Did he really think he would get away without the devil knowing? Well, he wouldn't. Midway through his journey, the devil appeared in front of him and said,
Iba a esperar para que murieras para cobrar la deuda que tienes conmigo, pero como te ocultas cobardemente, te llevaré ahora.
El Charro's horse began to buck at the devil in an attempt to get him away, but it was too late. El Charro's flesh began to disappear, leaving only his bones and all black Charro outfit with gold and silver trimmings. The devil spoke again.
Veo que tu estás fiel, por eso de ser maldita igual que tú, y condenada a acompañarte a tu viaje hacia el infierno. Aunque, de vez en cuando, quiero que hagas algo por mí, cobrarle a mis deudores. Si haces bien tu trabajo, dejaré que el hombre que acepte esa bolsa con monedas de oro que traes, tome tu lugar.
Ever since, the young Charro that once longed for riches was condemned to hell and would only be allowed to leave to collect the debts owed to the devil. and only should the debtor accept the bag of coins he offers, will El Charro Negro finally be free. So that is the legend of El Charro Negro. So I just love this story, for one, because I fell in love with the urban legend itself before I really learned exactly what it was about. It all sparked from a TikTok, I believe, where it was showing the different urban legends from different countries, and the specific TikTok was Mexico, so they showed La Llorona, they showed La Pascualita, those sort of things, and then it said El Charro Negro, and I was like, what is that? And it just caught my attention because in this TikTok, it showed basically El Charro Negro going through a panteon or through a cemetery, and these people freak out, right? So if you guys do want to see that little screenshot of it, you guys could find that on our Instagram. I'll go ahead and post it on there at calaveriapod. I will not be posting the TikTok because it's a compilation video, so I don't want to post that. But I'm sure you guys can find it on TikTok or on YouTube. So yeah, just search up, El Charro Negro in cemetery, and it'll basically be the one. It should be a small, short clip of literally looks like, a charro, just dressed in all black with a black horse rolling through a panteon. And he doesn't look towards the camera or anything like that. He's just going by, and then the people freak out. But when I seen that TikTok, it just sparked my interest immediately, and I knew I had to cover him. I just think the story itself is very, very interesting, and similar to the story of La Llorona, there isn't just one iteration. There actually are many different ones. So I told one in the beginning about the man Juan, right, who basically, he wasn't El Charro, but El Charro was actually after him because he accepted that bribe or that fortune from the snake, which is, in basically biblical terms or biblical sense, the snake from Adam and Eve, right? That's supposed to be the devil showing or trying to entice Adam and Eve to eat the apple, right? To commit, the first sin ever. So it has that sort of religious context in there with the snake representing the devil, which in the second iteration that I told, or the actual legend that is more commonly known, El Charro is sent to go collect the debts from the devil. So it makes sense that the devil, or the snake was oh, thank you for letting me into your home. And, basically, I'll give you the money for your soul. He takes the money. So guess what? When time comes, El Charro needs to go. And El Charro is the one that walks into the cantina. He tells him, hey, your wish is my command, basically, right? So he sends him to the devil. In a sense, that's what I took from it, right? They don't outright say that the snake is the devil, but basically I'm making that connection on my own. It's similar to the story that I just told about the actual legend, the one that's more commonly known, because the devil was the one that initially converted this person, right? There's not a name, which is why I didn't give a name for that second iteration, but ultimately turning this person into El Charro Negro. So I thought that was very interesting, and like I said, there are many different iterations, and I mentioned a couple of the states that the story is told itself, and there was another one that I found in my research, but this one was more specifically known, I guess, in San Juan de los Lagos, and this story is a little bit different. It is still similar where there's still this man who, in this case, isn't greedy and wanting to be rich or anything like that. And actually, in actuality, this person is quite the opposite. So he comes into town, which is San Juan de los Lagos, right? He comes there because he's in search of a place to stay. I believe in the story, it says that he's a Spaniard man, and he found San Juan de los Lagos and thought, hey, this is a perfect place for me to stay and relax. So he settles there. And quickly, the men start to envy him because he has this nice clothes and a nice horse, and the women are just attracted to him, so they do not like this man. They do not want him in town because he is, they're jealous of him. And he ends up hearing about, I guess, some treasure that is located in San Juan de los Lagos. And because he already has such wealth, he wants more, right? I feel like that's just something that we see a lot, right? Rich people want to get even richer, I guess. So he decides that he will buy the house that's right next to where the said treasure is supposed to be. And when he's there, he starts digging to like see like the other side, and in the story, he sticks his head through the hole, and just as he sticks his head through the hole, there's a person on the other side waiting to basically chop his head off. And it is said that the people of the town actually tricked him into buying that house and doing that whole thing so they could, get rid of him basically. And they did. And if I remember correctly, it said that like his head ends up just disappearing and there was just the body. And I think that goes with like another iteration of El Charro, where they say that you can't see his face. All it is that these eyes, these just glowing red balls of fire is what they say, that you could also find on his horse. It's just like interesting to see how many different places, although it's all from Mexico, right? These different places have different stories. It's similar how like here in the US, or I mean in other parts of the country or the world, right? There are different Bigfoots, right? There's basically like its cousin, the Yeti, which is the snow version of Bigfoot, right? But even here we have Bigfoot all over the country. There's different iterations of Bigfoot. There are different iterations of El Charro Negro. And I just thought this was so interesting because, I mean, this is basically it's history, right? It is our folklore. Personally, for me, I am Mexican, so this is very near and dear to me because this is basically the stories that potentially like my family grew up with, right? I had never heard of this before. Nobody in my family had specifically told me about it. But I'm sure when you hear this, you might ask, a parent, grandparent, somebody in your family about it. They might tell you like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. Or who knows, they might have an encounter with a charro. And if they do, I mean, I'd love to hear that story. But on top of that, there was more to it, to my research. I was very surprised to see that El Charro isn't just, some being that was just made up out of nowhere, seemingly like how they say like La Llorona was a story that was made up, back in very early like Mexican history. But also like La Llorona, they say there's ties to indigenous people of Mexico, where El Charro Negro also has those same ties. And I want to touch on that right now. So I found that like there actually is some indigenous inspiration, and this is said to be, I guess, sort of like the true origin tale of El Charro Negro. And basically, this tells of like two different, or not even two, but specifically two indigenous groups that I found. I'm sure there are many, many more, but one specifically, the Huichol people, right? So in this culture, they had these deities where they were known as neighbors. That was like their name. Or the mestizos, which if you don't know what a mestizo is, basically if you are Mexican or just Latin American in general, chances are you are a mestizo because of colonization. So the Spaniards, they came over, right? They just colonized majority of Latin America, Mexico specifically. And because they colonized Mexico, they also colonized the people. So the result of that was babies, or, the next generation being born of indigenous and Spanish blood, hence the mestizo, like the mixture, right? So it is the blend of those two people. And the Huicholes, they know their like deity, specifically this one specific deity who is just said to be terrifying. They know them as the mestizos, right? And specifically it has this name, Tematzi Tewari Yuwai, or translated to our big brother, the dark blue mestizo. Our big brother, the dark blue mestizo, or the dark blue mestizo, was said to represent the colonizer. And this was such a powerful deity that they said is the most powerful god in all of their gods. And it's just interesting to think about why that was the case. This was a Huichol god who didn't represent them, yet somehow it was the most powerful of them all. It shows the way the colonizers threatened their culture. This one god was able to beat the rest that were supposed to represent the Huichol people itself, and this like foreign, idea of this blended person is supposed to be the almighty God. I'm not saying it is the one they worship the most. This is just supposed to be the person that is the strongest, right? And not only that, he is known to be a collector, and he knows no forgiveness, which is very similar to El Charro Negro, where you could see that correlation there, right? El Charro is a collector for the devil too, and he knows no forgiveness. He will seek you down until he gets the debt back for the devil. It is said to be this mixture of indigenous and European cultures to make this urban legend that we now know as El Charro Negro. And I just was so astonished when I seen that, because it's very interesting to look back. Again, I mentioned that I am a history nerd, and learning about this Huichol god, this deity, the dark blue mestizo, and how similar the story was with El Charro Negro, which we know of today, right? Another society was the Mixtecs, and their version of El Charro was known as the patron of the place, who happened to live on top of a mountain and cares for the region. This person does not have any indigenous features either. He is said to actually be a white man mounted on a horse, which you can clearly see that with El Charro Negro, right? He isn't said to be a specific like white person. I mean, his bones, he is said to be just, in bones. So I guess, your bones are white. So I guess there's that correlation there, but mounted on a horse as well. And he was said to be dangerous to encounter to these indigenous people. Many people would start to carry garlic, which was said to deter him. That, I don't see that correlation with El Charro, because to my knowledge and my research, I didn't find anything that was said to deter him, like, El Silbón, where you carry spices or, have a dog with you or a whip. I didn't necessarily find anything that El Charro Negro was like scared of. It just seems that like he is this like demon or demonic entity that is said to just serve the devil. But on top of this, the patron of the place in the Mixtec society was also said to punish those who cause destruction to the forest and guard the treasures and punish those with greed. So there you go, you guys. You see that connection with greed once again from that initial story what I told about Juan, and then the one I told about the young Charro who was just wanting more and more and more. These stories passed down from generation to generation, and then later on mixed with the European or Spanish culture, creating what we have today. Not saying that this is something, I am proud of, or that you should be proud of being, having the country been colonized, because it's terrible what happened to the indigenous people. But this blend that we have, and we keep our roots, right? We have these stories to pass on from generation to generation. And if I would have never have, decided to research this, I never would have found out this piece of like paranormal history, and not only paranormal history, but history, right? Because like I said, for us that are Mexican, right? Or even just Latin Americans in general, so much of our history we may think is forgotten because of the fact that we were colonized and so much of our society was destroyed, but we are strong and it has been passed down. It may not look the same way that it was created, but it is still there with different things from La Llorona, right? We had the inspiration too from all the way back until when the conquistadors came to El Charro Negro, the same thing. These stories live on, although they change throughout the times, they are still with us. And I just find it so beautiful. And I thought that like, wow, like it was so empowering to think about, as empowering, like some sort of like demonic being could be. It was just so interesting. And if you can't tell, I mean, like I'm gushing over this. I love it. I love it. So, I mean, let me know, have you guys ever encountered El Charro Negro? Has anybody in your family encountered El Charro? Personally, like I said, I haven't. I never heard about it until I seen that TikTok. Nobody in my family has ever mentioned him before. I don't know if anybody knows of him. So I'd be like interested to see if anybody has a story about it or not. I did try to convert this into like one of our more, I guess, formal or like our other Folklore Friday stories or episodes, that had stories to go with it as well. But I wasn't able to find too many. So it just seems to be like one of those folklores that just live on, right, throughout the ages. And that's perfectly fine, right? We don't always need to have stories to go with everything. It could just be something that we pass on to our children and our children's children, just to have, our culture alive. And this is something that is very unique to us. Every society, every culture has their own urban legends, and this is near and dear to people, right? So many people love cryptids for whatever reason. They embrace them. You have the Mothman in West Virginia. They embrace it. They have a statue for it. So these stories are just important to remember and to pass on to one another. And I'm glad I'm able to do that for you guys. So now that we've covered the whole historical aspect of it, let's talk about El Charro Negro himself, right? Like today, like what is he known to do? So as we heard in that story, right, El Charro is a debt collector. He is said to roam areas or regions where there aren't many people. Mainly, he is said to be out in the streets at night. So if you are walking a lonely path, you better get home pretty quickly, because chances are you may run into El Charro, and he may entice you with some gold coins, and if you were to take it, right, that's going to be the price you have to pay, is your soul. That's what we've seen with the past story. He is also said to roam on the sidewalks. That was something very specific that they talked about, that he is on the sidewalks with a big horse, so it seems like it'd be kind of hard to miss a person or a thing, right, in an all black charro's outfit, black horse on the sidewalk. So I don't know how necessarily that works, but again, avoid sidewalks, avoid being alone. And for those of you that are greedy, I guess, right, that you just want more and more and more, and will do anything for fortune or for fame, you guys better be careful, because as we've seen with our buddy Juan, El Charro is after those people. He is making sure that they pay their debts, and he's going to entice you with these with more riches. And the other thing that we talked about was that snake. He is said to appear in people's dreams, or it is said to trigger him with these sort of dreams. People just dream of the snake, the same way that Juan dreamt of the snake, asking him to trade basically his soul for the riches. This is another thing that is said to basically call El Charro, which that just sounds scary in and of itself, right? I can't imagine dreaming a snake talking to me, for one. That's just kind of weird. But then telling me hey, I'll give you a bag full of gold coins, or I'll make you rich for the rest of your life in exchange for your son. That just seems a little too excessive. And especially if they tell me hey, when you wake up tomorrow, it's going to be under your pillow, and I check under my pillow the next day, after I dreamt this whole thing and it's there, I'm definitely not going to do that, because it's just screaming like a red flag. This is just bad news. So if you ever find yourself dreaming about a talking snake trying to offer you riches in exchange for your son, it's probably not a good idea to take them, right? I wouldn't even advise touching them in general. Just throw the whole bed away, right? It's just no, because you have no idea what you're messing with. And this is just scary how he can infiltrate your dreams, right? Sleep is supposed to be the time where you get to relax, and it's just this peaceful moment that you get to enjoy with yourself and your dreams too. It's this place where you get to get away from the world, just to be infiltrated by some demonic entity that is sent by the devil himself to gather another soul. That is just insane to me. No, count me out of that. If I ever dream about a snake, you guys will be the first ones to hear about it. But as of right now, I'm safe. I hope nobody else does. And again, if that ever happens to you guys, do not touch the bag. Well, with that, I would like to end off by thanking my sources. Thank you to dmexico.com for their web post El Charro Negro, the ghost of the Mexican Revolution that terrified the entire country. Thank you to topadventure.com for their article Conoce la leyenda del Charro Negro, written by Chris Canal on October 22nd, 2021, and I'm sorry if I butchered that name. Thank you to turismo.guadalajaravisit.com for their web post La leyenda del Charro Negro. Thank you to mexicodailypost.com for their article El Charro Negro, a tragic legend of San Juan de los Lagos, written by an unknown author on March 15th, 2021. And finally, thank you to wikipedia.org for their page on Ghost of Mexican Culture. And as always, everybody, you know that I'm not going to leave you without something to talk about. So for this episode, I don't know how many of you guys are, on Twitter or on the social medias as much as like I am. But even if you aren't, chances are you may have seen this potentially on the news. So this past week, there was a cloud formation that seemed to look like a UFO or like a giant eye just formed over the sky in Bursa, Turkey. And I am looking at this photo right now. You could just search up UFO cloud, or if you guys want to, I will be posting this on the Calaveria podcast Instagram at calaveriapod. So go ahead and check that out on there. But this cloud just formed over Bursa, Turkey, and it left many people wondering like exactly what was going on. There's plenty of photos and videos taken of people in this town, and I believe this town is said to have like at least over like 1 million people, so it's pretty populated. And just imagine how many people, went out that day and just looked at the sky and just seen this massive like UFO shaped cloud. Like I don't even know what I would think. It's so weird and random, but it's scientifically proven that this is something that I guess I wouldn't say it's normal, because I feel like we would know more about it. It wouldn't have shocked so many people, but it is something that is natural. It does occur, obviously. I mean, it happened here, but it is just insane. Like, there are no other clouds around it. It is seemingly by itself, which is why it like shocked so many people. Nonetheless, like I said, this is explainable, and the photo itself, it's eye-catching, right? The cloud is huge, like I mentioned. It's illuminated just bright orange, so it definitely catches your attention. And I can only imagine what you would even think if you've seen this in person. But the so-called UFO cloud is actually a type of cloud that is known as the lenticular cloud, which is said to not be uncommon in mountainous regions, which, looking at the geography of Bursa, it makes perfect sense because it's nuzzled around the nearby Mount Uladog, which I hope that's how you pronounce it. But it is these mountainous regions that are said to affect like these cloud formations, because it tends to like push the air down and it kind of compresses it, which people say that like the cloud also does look like pancakes stacked on top of each other, which I'm assuming that's what like the air is kind of doing, is like compacting the clouds together, which makes sense. I could see how people like could imagine like the pancake just squished. There is a lot more to the cloud formation, but I'm not a meteorologist, so I'm not going to dive into that. But if you guys are interested in learning more about it, or you want to check out the article, it is by the Washington Post, and it is written by Matthew Capucci, and it was written on January 22nd, 2023. And again, if you guys do want to see that picture or any pictures for today's episode or prior episodes, you guys can follow us at calaveriapod, which just so happens to be our handle on TikTok and Twitter as well. And I know I always talk about our TikTok blowing up, but for some reason, our TikTok is doing numbers right now. So I tend to make TikToks on the episodes that we talk about, or at least one of the topics that we talk about in an episode. And I made one for El Cibon back in October. And for some reason, as of this last week, it has been blowing up. I got like over 400 followers off of this one TikTok alone. It is our most viewed TikTok by far, by like over 100,000 views. So like, I don't even know what's going on right now. It is going insane. It is our most liked TikTok. But I mean, hopefully that can translate over to more listeners. So we shall see. But again, if you guys aren't following us there, make sure to follow us. You can, get a more condensed version of our episodes. And also, if you guys do want to support the show, you guys could leave a 5-star rating and a review on whatever podcasting app you are listening to us on. If by any chance you're listening on an app that doesn't let you send in a review or anything, feel free to email us or whatever. Follow us on Instagram, send us a message, whatever it is. We just accept anything. And again, if you guys have a story to tell, we say it every single time, email us at calaveriapod@gmail.com. And that's not just for stories. If you guys want to send us your own personal stories, family stories, whatever the case is, we welcome that. But also, if you have a suggestion or a topic or something that you want us to cover, in a brief end of the episode, beginning of the episode, whatever the case may be, send it in, because we're always eager to find new spooky things or things that, we would like to share with everybody, right? So if you have something, you find something, send it our way. We'll always be happy to accept that. And with that, I just want to thank everybody for listening. And always remember, always say no to snakes in your dreams. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.